Thank you, Dr. Jones. Will you take any questions now from the
I'll be
audience?
happy to take questions.
Would you stay by the microphone, please?
Stay by the microphone if you have any questions.
Would you give the microphone?
Yes, Steve.
There's a microphone.
Isn't the current Catholic belief quite different from what it used to be? It used to be sort of ethnocentric. Catholics favored other Catholics. Probably these other groups, Irish favored other Irish, Poles favored other Poles. Well, that's considered to be the greatest sin today.
Yes.
Like racism.
You're right.
You know, they favored white folk over black folk. You know, so that would be the Catholic Church. In other words, one is not supposed to identify with a particular ethnic group or even with religion in the sense of rewarding Catholics somehow over other Catholics. In other words, most, you know, even people who see themselves as good Catholics now would perhaps identify with a non-Catholic group that suffers as opposed to a Catholic group. Whereas once that wasn't, obviously, you know, the Irish were more concerned about their sufferings than the Zulus who lived in Zululand. But I think modern Catholics would sort of see this as sort of wrong. This is sort of selfish. Isn't there a change in, this is real Christianity?
You're absolutely right. If you would say to a Catholic, or a Catholic would be first to say, well, Catholic means universal. And so therefore, any type of concern for the proper order of charity would be considered selfishness or racism or ethnocentrism. Proper order of charity being charity begins at home. In other words, the people who are closest to you would have the first call on your demands, your family has your first call, and then the local community has the next call, and so on and so forth in that order. This has also disrupted the Catholic notion of what a parish is, because a parish was defined as a geographical unit and oftentimes had an ethnic constituency, and suddenly it seemed to be the case that if some person was not included in your parish, that you were guilty of something. And so therefore the Catholics were sort of guilty. The minute they said the word "we," they were convicted of some sort of crime. The best instance of this was the bishop's statement on race of 1958. The bishops issued this statement in response, largely, now the agency that is orchestrating this is the Catholic Interracial Council at this point. Father Lafarge is nominally in charge, but he's a very old man at this point. And he's being replaced by people like Sergeant Shriver, who was the up-and-coming guy, and also Dennis Clark of Philadelphia, who is probably the main character of this book. But the Catholic bishops are pressured by the Catholic Interracial Council to issue a statement on race based on the segregation situation in Little Rock, Arkansas, which is completely alien and has really no relationship whatsoever to Catholic life in this country. First of all, it's a public school, and most Catholics go to Catholic schools, and secondly, it's in an area of the country where there are very few Catholics. So it's a completely alien thing. This statement would say things like, the Negro is a child of God. No Catholic ever disputed that. I mean, in terms of polygenism, you know, that had never been a Catholic issue. All right? This was another type of issue. And so what this became was an instrument to club Catholics who did not like social engineering into submission. When, after the Folcroft riot that I mentioned, Dennis Clark persuaded the Archdiocese of Philadelphia to order the pastor of that parish in Folcroft to read the bishop's statement on race to the parishioners. When he stood up there and read that, large numbers of parishioners simply got up and walked out of the church, because I think a fundamental right was being denied here in the name of justice. In other words, the fundamental right was the right of a community to defend itself. And so beginning with there, then followed by the huge publicity which the civil rights movement got, the Catholic educational establishment would often, Tom Herron has documented this in articles in Culture Wars, going to North Catholic High School, where everyone in the class was accused of being a racist. Because of what? Well, because they were objecting to these social engineering schemes. So in effect what happened was, I think, is that you destroyed the Catholic community. You destroyed the sense of the parish as the Catholic community. You destroyed the sense of Catholic solidarity and substituted a large kind of amorphous altruism in its place that really was not, was completely utopian. And you did this at a time, at a time when the Catholics were extremely vulnerable, namely the transition of the triple melting pot, the third generation, when suddenly it didn't mean as much to be Polish or Irish anymore. In other words, this group of Catholics was coming together, but they were never allowed to say, well, we have an identity. In other words, they ceased being Irish, and as a result, they just felt, well, I lost all ethnic identity, rather than saying, now you're a Catholic ethnic, and you have, people have the right to defend their community, the whole thing, you would say. That, in other words, a smooth transition from the Irish neighborhood into the pan-European Catholic neighborhood of the triple melting pot.
But wouldn't the current, dominant Catholic view be that all this past sort of ethnic, religious identification was wrong? It's contrary to the teachings of Christianity.
Well,
that really one should not have any group identification. As a matter of fact, one should actually go out of one's way to support other groups.
Of education, I think you'd have to say yes. Okay. I think that is clearly the view that replaced itself. And the corollary was that your parents are all racists. We have hope for your generation, but your parents are all racist. This is the message that was subtly conveyed to students during the Cultural Revolution of the 60s. And a lot of it took. There was this disruption of the ability to transmit Catholic values from one generation to the other, largely because of the disruption of ethnic identity. So I think you're right. I think that is precisely the way people began to view themselves.